It is Monday, July 6, 2026. The Treasury Department says children can now begin tracking their Trump account investments today. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports modest hiring gains in June, even as parts of the labor market cool. And U.S. Central Command holds a regional security dialogue that includes Syria and Lebanon for the first time. Here are the day's top stories. The U.S. Treasury Department announced on July 4th the official nationwide launch of the full Trump Accounts app, giving families a new way to manage their children's savings and investment accounts. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Trump accounts are now live, giving every child a stake in the American economy from day one. Beginning today, enrolled children can start tracking their investments through the app. Treasury said the app now includes 15 interactive financial education modules covering saving, investing, and compound growth, alongside real-time account dashboards for parents. More than 50 companies have committed to contribute to Trump accounts for employees' children. Treasury framed the program as a response to historically uneven stock ownership, particularly among younger and lower-income households, aiming to give children a foothold in markets from birth. Enrollment is open now at trumpaccounts.gov, where families can review eligibility and safeguards before opening an account. The rollout marks a shift in federal savings policy, linking childhood financial education directly to real capital markets. Its long-term impact depends on employer participation and sustained enrollment, the two factors that will determine whether it meaningfully narrows the wealth gap it targets. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported on July 2nd that total non-farm payroll employment rose by 57,000 in June, while the unemployment rate held at 4.2%. BLS said hospitals added 9,000 jobs and professional and business services continued trending upward, while leisure and hospitality employment fell by 61,000 amid weaker seasonal hiring. The report marks the agency's most recent monthly snapshot of the labor market. BLS data also show average hourly earnings rose 3.5% over the year, keeping wage growth ahead of the Federal Reserve's inflation target even as job creation slows from earlier in the year, in part reflecting recent supply-driven price pressures in the energy sector. The report arrives as the central bank weighs how much longer to hold interest rates at their current elevated level. A modest payroll gain paired with a steady unemployment rate suggests the labor market is cooling gradually rather than deteriorating sharply, giving the Fed room to keep rates unchanged without adding recession risk for policymakers watching both inflation and employment closely. U.S. Central Command said its commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, led a regional security dialogue hosted by the Bahrain Defense Force in Manama on July 1st, bringing together senior military officials from 12 nations, including Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. CENTCOM said it marked the first time Syrian and Lebanese military leaders joined a U.S.-led regional defense conference. Admiral Cooper said, quote, "We continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our regional partners," end quote, adding that discussions underscored a shared commitment to regional security and stability. Leaders specifically reaffirmed their commitment to the free flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz, building on a Middle East Air Defense Coordination Cell, CENTCOM, established with regional partners in January. Cooper added that regional partners operate what CENTCOM calls the world's most sophisticated air and missile defense network in the Middle East. Syria and Lebanon's first-ever participation signals a notable diplomatic opening, suggesting Washington is widening its regional security umbrella to include governments that were previously outside its defense partnerships, a shift that could reshape alliances across a historically fractured region. The Federal Reserve's Open Market Committee voted 12-0 on June 17th to hold the federal funds rate at a target range of 3.5% to 3.75%, reaffirming its policy of maintaining ample reserves in the banking system. The committee said economic activity is expanding at a solid pace, though it noted elevated uncertainty tied in part to the conflict in the Middle East. The committee said job gains have kept pace with the workforce and inflation remains above its 2% goal, citing supply shocks that have driven up prices in certain sectors, including energy. This remains the Fed's most recent monetary policy statement as summer trading continues. The hold signals the Fed is balancing solid growth against persistent inflation, keeping borrowing costs elevated until price pressures from energy and supply disruptions clearly recede. It's the clearest signal yet that policymakers see inflation, not growth, as the bigger near-term risk. President Trump signed an executive order on June 22 directing an accelerated nationwide migration to post-quantum cryptography, according to a White House fact sheet. The order directs the Office of Management and Budget and the National Cyber Director to lead the effort, with federal agencies required to transition high-value data assets to the new standard by 2030 and 2031, depending on use case. The White House said the order responds to the risk that adversaries could collect encrypted U.S. data now and decrypt it later once large-scale quantum computers become operational. It also directs a Commerce Department pilot migration project to be completed by December 31, 2027, and instructs federal contractors to meet new cybersecurity standards by the end of 2030. The order treats quantum computing as a near-term national security threat rather than a distant possibility, pushing federal agencies and contractors onto a fixed timeline to protect sensitive data before quantum decryption becomes feasible, for a threat many experts consider inevitable, not hypothetical. Like and subscribe for fact-based news from official government sources only. Leave a comment. Tell us what stories you want to hear.